Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. We're going to talk with former presidential candidate and former Senator Rick Santorum at the bottom of this hour, just in about 15 minutes from now, about the race for the Republican nomination in the state of Mississippi for one of the two U.S. Senate seats in the state of Mississippi. Roger Wicker is the other senator from Mississippi. Thad Cochran is the incumbent, whose number comes up in the fall of 2014, a challenge. We've talked about this frequently on this program, but just to catch those that may just be tuning in to catch us up to speed, he's receiving a serious challenge from a Tea Party candidate by the name of Chris McDaniel. Chris McDaniel has been a state senator in the state of Mississippi and has worked on some very, very important legislation on behalf of the citizens of Mississippi. And Senator Cochran, primarily known by how much pork he has brought back to the state of Mississippi. So he's been a classic big government Republican, big government conservative, so to speak. And it's been fascinating to watch as his opponents, as McDaniel's opponents, have tried to argue that if he is elected, all of this money is going to stop flowing from Washington, D.C., to the state of Mississippi, and it is Republicans who are making this argument. It is Republicans campaigning against Chris McDaniel that sound like Democrats. Their whole deal is we need to elect this guy because he's going to give us more goodies than the other guy. This is exactly how the Democrats, this is exactly how liberals, this is exactly how progressives run their campaigns, by promising to outpander the conservatives in the race. We'll give you more goodies than the conservatives. And now those that are running against Chris McDaniel are sounding just like card-carrying liberals. And after a while, you begin to wonder, well, what exactly is the difference here between a senator like Thad Cochran, whose basic claim to fame is how many goodies he's brought home to his home state? How is he different than the average Democrat out there? Now, let me see if I can grab a couple of stories on this topic. One of the things that is interesting is to see that some of the backstory going on in this race. The story broke this morning from Breitbart.com. And this is something anecdotally, I've talked to people on Senator McDaniel's staff, and they have reported that their campaign signs, that McDaniel campaign signs, have been stolen. One man who has worked on McDaniel's campaign said, look, I had a 71-year-old woman come to me, and she said, look, I put up 125 Chris McDaniel yard signs, and the next morning when I went back, every single one of them had been stolen. And these anecdotal reports are coming in from all across the state of Mississippi. Now here's the story. Dateline: Biloxi, a staffer for Senator Thad Cochran's reelection campaign, was fired after he was arrested and accused by police of stealing campaign signs for Cochran's primary opponent, State Senator Chris McDaniel. His name is Lee Ellis Blair. He's a member of the DeSoto County GOP Executive Committee. So he's a classic member of the GOP establishment. He's been on Senator Cochran's campaign staff. Nothing wrong with that. But now he has been charged with malicious mischief. The police report alleged that Blair, quote, did willfully, unlawfully, and maliciously or mischievously disfigure, destroy, injure, or cause to be destroyed a Chris McDaniel campaign sign, the personal property of Tea Party Express. He also tore down and destroyed Freedom Works signs for McDaniel, Retire Thad signs, and the Tea Party Patriots Citizens Fund sign noting that they endorsed Senator McDaniel. Now, latest poll has come out. This is probably the last one that will be released before the election by Chisholm Strategies. And their polling data, their poll carried out over the weekend, indicates that Senator McDaniel is up 52-44 going into the election tomorrow. Now, that 50% threshold, that's a magic mark. That's a magic threshold. If somebody is still in the 40s, and only 4% of the people in this poll were undecided. So the people they talked to are pretty well set. And people rarely make up their minds late in the game. Most people by this time have made up their minds. And according to Chisholm Strategies, 52-44. So once a candidate gets over that 50% threshold, he's a heavy favorite to hold on to that lead on Election Day. So the momentum seems to be running in the direction of Chris McDaniel. Now, there's another interesting dynamic in this Mississippi race, and we'll take phone calls in this first hour. We'll take phone calls on this McDaniel-Cochran race. I'd love to have callers call in from all over the country, especially from the state of Mississippi, but we have our network extends across 35 states. I'd be interested to have anybody from any state, anywhere, call if you've been following at all this Cochran-McDaniel race and let us know what you think and how you're going to vote and why you're going to vote the way you're going to vote. We respect everybody's decision, everybody's right to make the choice to vote for the candidate they think is best going to reflect their values. So we welcome callers who support whatever candidate. I want to make that very clear. But we'll take calls over the course of this first hour. We'll probably start at the end of the next segment with Senator Santorum. Last segment, we'll take your calls and give the number out in the next segment. Get your reactions to this race. Now, here's another interesting part of this, that according to Mississippi state law, anybody can vote in any primary they want to. So Democrats can vote in a Republican primary because people in the state of Mississippi do not register by party. You just register to vote, and then you go to a primary election. You just ask either for the Democrat ballot or you ask for the Republican ballot, and you can vote in either one. But if you voted in the in the Democratic primary in June 3, this is a runoff, remember, the main primary was June 3, a Democrat who voted in the Democratic primary on June 3 cannot cross over now and vote in the runoff in the Republican election. If they've already cast a vote in the Democratic primary, then they're done. They're toast. They're out of there. They can't vote again on the 24th. Now, one of the things that Senator Cochran's campaign has been doing is trying to get Democrats to cross over and vote for Senator Cochran. Now, what are they saying by that? What is the Cochran campaign saying when they get they're trying to entice Democrats to vote for him? They're saying, hey, if you want Democrat light, then I'm your guy. If you want sort of a pseudo-Republican, sort of a Democrat in sheep's clothing, then Thad Cochran's your guy. Vote for me. So they're out there enticing Democrats to come and vote for Thad Cochran, basically on the grounds that he's a lot more like a Democrat than his opponent, Chris McDaniel. So the psychology of that, I think, is probably pretty telling to voters trying to make up their mind. But there's been a lot of money flowing into this effort, walking around money, it's called. I read one article, I don't have it in front of me, but it talked about basically the bounties that were being offered to pastors of black churches to endorse Senator Cochran from the pulpit or to get their people to vote for them. There was almost, at one point, there was a claim that there was an offer of X number of dollars for every vote for Senator Cochran that a pastor could deliver. If you endorse, you get this much money. If you get people to promise to vote for Senator Cochran, you get an extra bonus. Now, it's not technically vote buying because he can only vote once, and they're not paying the people that are going to vote for Cochran. They're paying the guy that's going to turn people out to vote for Cochran, and that is the pastor. But these are Democrats. You know, Mississippi, 98% of blacks in Mississippi voted for President Obama in 2008. I think 88% of whites voted for John McCain. So that gives you an idea of kind of the bifurcation you have in Mississippi politics. But here's the deal. According to Mississippi state law, if you vote in the primary of the opposite party, you can only do so if you are pledged to support the candidate that wins that primary. In other words, if you vote in the Republican primary, then the law requires you, if you're going to vote again in November, it requires you to vote for the candidate that won the Republican primary. In other words, you are not allowed by Mississippi law to vote in the Republican primary because you want to keep somebody out of the running, and then turn around and vote for the Democrat in November. You're not allowed by law to do that. Now, it's an unenforceable law because you'd have to have a mind reader to figure out what was going on in somebody's head. And, it's unenforceable. Somebody could always say, well, yeah, I really liked the guy back in June, but then I've seen more about the candidates and I've changed my mind. I'm going to vote for the other guy in November. So there's no way you can enforce it. But the point is, Mississippi law is very clear on this. And you have a number of these activists for Cochran, these Democratic activists, they are out there openly saying, we're trying to recruit people from our community to vote for Senator Cochran, even though I'm going to vote for Travis Childers in November, and they're going to vote for Travis Childers in November. So they're making it very, very clear that they are intending to break the law. Now, J. Christopher Adams came up with a piece, PJ Media, talking about the complicity, apparently, of Democrat notaries. These are notary public. What do they call them? Notary what? Notary public. Yeah, notary publics. Tatler has learned, according to Chris Adams, that Democrat notaries who engaged in illegal conduct in previous elections in Mississippi, according to a federal court ruling, are now harvesting absentee ballots for the Republican runoff from African Americans who have always voted in Democratic Party primaries. So you've got these notaries that have already been found guilty in court of participating in electoral fraud. They're out there getting absentee ballots in the names of Democrats who've always voted in the Democratic Party primaries. They're getting absentee ballots in their name, and apparently they are voting for these people. And one of the pieces of evidence is how skewed some of the voting results are in some of these districts where there appears to be, these are primarily black districts, and all of a sudden you have this sudden surge in Republican voters. And J. Christian Adams says, look, this is probably coming from these notaries that are harvesting these absentee ballots, filling them out for the absentee voter who doesn't even know this is being done. They stamp it with their notary public stamp, turn it in. That vote counts as a count for Thad Cochran. Focal Point AFR Talk. We'll be right back with Senator Rick Santorum.